Hi, my name is Peter, and today I would like to talk about three basic but critical points of model railroad design that will either determine your ultimate satisfaction or utter frustration with your layout. These 3 points are so important that almost every model railroader will have to deal with these at one time or another when designing their model railroad. The first uh, critical point is layout height. Now, example I'm going to use in and around here my layouts I have in the garage here to help illustrate these. Layout height is very personable. It is tied to obviously how tall you are. So if you are, and how you want to operate your trains. If you like to hear, like example here, I am 6'7", so I want something tall. So here we have something here over about 5 feet high here at this lower level, and it's about 5.5 feet up here at this level. So I normally will operate standing here, so I want this kind of realistic operation that's reasonably close to eye level. Obviously, if you're shorter, you're gonna need to make it shorter. The very most important thing to do is mock things up. Don't just assume the height is going to be fine. You just want to be able to, whether you take some bookshelves or a piece of furniture and just sit and figure out, okay, this is where the height is going to be at. So it will make a difference. The other thing about height is you have to consider, again, the height, but you also have to consider, what are you going to do if I need to get underneath? And it's one thing if you can think about my height over the top, but if you're going to be drilling feeders down or putting accessories, circuit boards, things like that, you're going to need things underneath. The advantage is here, even my height here, with a 5-foot height, I can easily get underneath here, have my head clear the edge here, and be able to work under here without too much cramping. The previous layout I had, and I'll show a bit of it later here. I'm going to turn the camera around. Is I only built it at 4 feet high, and that was mainly because the pieces of lumber, the 2x2s, were 8 feet. You could economize by cutting it in half. Don't do that. You're better off getting multiple sticks of lumber so you can get it the right height. The problem is with 4 feet, and that comes down to about like in here. Well, you can see where I'm sitting at. Something that this height, I had to get way down and come up. When my head is actually in between the supports here, making work underneath, especially with this, trying to fiddle with getting switch machines to line up, or some of these electronic signal detector boards, getting to work and tune up. It just became totally arduous. So it's very important you consider your maintenance needs on underneath, so you have plenty of room to work here, as well as work on top. So you can see here's this workbench again, and you can see my waist height is pretty close to the top of this, and then she is trying to get underneath. While this was okay for operating, even when I built this, I wish I'd done like 6 inches higher. Would have been a bit more easier. But even at 4 feet height, it did cause a little bit of uncomfort working at times. So again, it's just very important that we make sure that you have this at a comfortable level to work on and to run your trains. I also want to add an additional note here. If we're talking about double-deck railroads, and double-deck railroads allows you to get twice as much track or room to run in a given space. And usually you'll have a layer like this. You have a layer, something down here, say at 4 feet, and maybe something here, another level, foot up, and usually connected by a spiral helix, typically. If you're doing height, is also very important. For double deck layouts, you could assume like this workbench height and this shelf layout up here could actually work fine as a shelf layout. This is about 12-inch spacing. And you'll note here that even though this is relatively narrow here, the spacing on this 12 inches, you can actually the top deck here doesn't interfere with the lower deck. You can see all the way back from standing back here, and this will allow all of the work to go on. But just to note is that if you have to work on anything on this top deck, is that this can be difficult to. Why it makes sense you think you build the top deck, the bottom deck first, then the top. For a lot of people, it actually makes sense to do the top deck first. You can do all the wiring and stuff underneath without anything underneath here, then work from the bottom. But you do keep in mind, you eventually will probably need maintenance. You might need a switch machine replacement or something like that under here. So you might want to consider that something that maybe something closer to 17 inches, something up here, might actually be better for you, especially if you have to get down here and get underneath here and crawl across the bottom of the layout to get up to fix something under there. Okay, the next critical point is reach. We kind of went vertical. Now we do the horizontal. Reach is also just as important. Now, and really, regardless of your height, you can only really comfortably reach about 24 inches or so. And this is really, the 24 inches represents comfortably working on track, wiring, scenery, detailings like that. You can work. This workbench here, example here, is 24 inches. This is 24 inches wide here. This will actually allow, and you can easily reach back here. Like the shelf layout up here is a little bit higher up. It's harder to reach. Keep in mind, the higher a layout is, the more difficult it is to reach into the scene. But even here, this being back a foot, I can still reach in a foot. If this still wasn't here, you have obviously no problem reaching a scene here that was a foot deep. There's no problem doing any of the scenery and working on up here at this point. However, the other part is we can reach about 24, but obviously there is a limit to how far you can reach. Once you get, so 24 is comfortable, but once you get to, say, 30 inches would really be a practical maximum. Again, it's kind of get a bit more of a stretch. I can actually reach out because of my arm length. I can get out to about 36 inches or so. But that's really at the most. Maybe I could, plant a tree or re-rail a car at this distance. At that distance, you really can't really see. Did you lay your track appropriately? Did you not have a kink or a bump in it? And typically people come across Murphy's Law. The Murphy's Law, the switch that you can't reach is the one that have the problem. This is because you couldn't see enough well in there to actually make sure you didn't have a hump or bump or missing your rails off a bit, for instance. So that's the reason why for that. So if you can eliminate that, so you can get all your track and switches within arm's length, you'll have a lot less problems, going forward. All right, here I moved the camera here over to my O-gauge layout. And here you can see some of the differences, the issue with some of the reach issues here. This layout here is, unfortunately, because of how things are, and some things are always not perfect, so we weren't perfect here on preaching these reaches in here. But again, that 36 inches only gets me to this back track. It does not really get me to the wall, for instance. Now, when I built this layout, I actually made it so that this main part of the module here was actually, I actually built it away from the wall first, and that allowed me to do all the track and true everything up. And then, only then, once that was truly working, then did I put the backdrops on and then push this whole thing back. And then later, because I have this yard that's actually this yard that sits over here, it's about 18 inches wide, and it is permanently it is mounted to the top of this this wire racking here, so we can't move. So it means the layout over here also cannot move. One of the important things that, even though the layout is somewhat too deep and I can reach back there to get a car, is important. The two switches that are on this layout, they are all within easy easy reach. So I can do any maintenance and like that. I can reach them quite easily, and there are manual switches because I can reach them back there. So again, if you can't reach, have your mechanical stuff as far as forward as you can, so you can actually reach that. If not, you are asking for some problem. The third critical point we have to deal with is related to reach, is aisle width, and this is something that's usually the opposite, the converse of reach. People will make their layouts wider into and they end up sacrificing aisle width. And conversely, if you wanting to widen aisle width, a lot of times you have to shorten the reach or shorten the shallow up the particular your layout sections. Now, typically for aisle width, this really depends again on who is operating your layout. And is it just a single? Like for me, 99% of the time, it's just me. I might have somebody over here occasionally. It's happened about 3 or 4 times in 20 years, so I must count that 99% plus. Or sometimes you might have a couple folks to come over, or you might be in a large layout situation where you might have 10, 15 people, and you're running multiple crews and things like that. So the more people you have, the more critical aisle space is. So really, the bare minimum you need in aisle space is about 18 inches. And and again, unfortunately, I make myself a liar here. This is actually, unfortunately, most like 16 in here. This is a pinch point here, and in between the edge of this plywood here, holding the T-tracks, and then the this other metal shelving racking here. Unfortunately, I can't shift this layout any more than I can. I'm pretty much at the maximum dimensions. So I have to kind of like, if I want to get in here, I have to do this kind of shuttle kind of stuff back here. But it does work. This module back here is unscenic, and I won't be potentially of actually hitting anything. That's the danger of something too narrow, is that you might accidentally snag something, a building or something, or a train. But here there's enough clearance that won't happen. Then once you're a little more than that, if you want to get more comfortable operation, this again represented here with this kind of aisle here, and this is about, what you see here is about 2 feet wide here. 2 feet wide. There's enough. You can get in here, and you can stand here and easily operate within your area here. If I was sitting down, same thing. It's possible at 2 feet, if you get next close to the layout, somebody could kind of slide on past you. The operator pit that's kind of like in here, in the middle in here, this is about, at least it's a minimum of 3 feet square in here. Once you get to about 3 feet, you don't have a problem with passing. So you have 3 foot aisles. If you have people working here and working over here, as example, you could have 2 operators back to back, and they wouldn't interfere with each other. But again, about 3 feet is about minimum. If you're again, you got larger yards and larger spaces, if you can get 4 or 5 feet, that's actually great. So generally, we want to make sure that we just have enough adequate operating space for everyone to circulate. So again, if you have a large layout that you're doing, say, 2-man crews and a full operations, car cards and things, then you're going to need aisle space. You're looking at that 4 feet plus kind of things. You can get multiple people to pass each other at the same time. What we don't want here is, they should never run into a situation like this where a pinch point in here. A pinch point should only be for like a single person access and for a very short distance. Otherwise, it is quite uncomfortable. So to conclude, it's important. So everybody needs to consider height, reach, and aisle width, and those 3 combined together will also help determine what kind of footprint your model railroad will be. You can do something like this right here, what you see here, the camera, like the T-tracks layout here. This is a representative of a island style plan, which sits out in the middle of the room. Island style plans are relatively space inefficient, but of course you require aisles all the way around. So again, you could have that. You have to. I think you got to add at least 2 feet all the way around, depending on things. That's why your traditional 4x8 piece of plywood, which a lot of people start at, is really like if you put it in the middle of a room, it's really 8x12, and that starts becoming a problem for like your typical bedroom. So then you actually almost really need to go to a round the walls type of plan instead. And so like the O gauge layout here, which is kind of generally representative around the walls because it is going around an L shape and is going around like two walls as an example here. But again, this allows you can put this around 2 walls or maybe all 3. You can have an operator pit in the middle, and this really allows your maximum aisle width, for instance. You can also get your pretty wide curves, things like that. Instead of being limited to the 4x8 board, you can have some pretty wide sweeping corners as you go around the around the corners of the room. And of course, you can always do a shelf layout like this. The shelf layouts again, you can be short like this 6-foot mini switching layout like this one is, or this could go down the whole wall of a family room or garage, bedroom, things like that. Again, very similar to your around the walls kind of a thing, but generally just a little bit in smaller levels. You're not going to have big peninsulas and things like that. But again, advantage of shelf layouts is they can really take no extra additional space. So this one here is sitting over the top of this workbench. It's taking no extra space other than sitting on a wall. You could easily have a layout like this sitting on file cabinets or bookshelves or something like that, and it will take no extra space since there's already furniture occupying that space. So I'm hoping that this video and these basic design points was helpful, and it'd be great. I would really love to hear what your thoughts are. If you have any comments, any things that we missed, or trials and tribulations that you had with these kind of tricky issues, which may look to be okay on paper, but people don't necessarily scale too well when going to real life. So sometimes you get these unintended surprises.